This podcast is to demonstrate how to create a virtual machine using VirtualBox and as the host and Ubuntu as the virtual machine. The first thing you do is you go to a Google search and look up VirtualBox. And you could just click here. VirtualBox is free. You can use there's different platforms you can use it on, whether it be on Mac or Windows or on Ubuntu itself. Personally, I'm a Windows person, but it works really well on Mac too, especially if you have an SSD. And plus, if you run it on a Mac, you can have different versions of Windows, Ubuntu, and then your Mac OS as the host. But I'm a Windows guy, so I'm going to stick with this version. I've already got it downloading. Actually, I'm going to cancel this. I've already got it downloaded right here. And also, you can go to another Google search. I can't type. And then search for Ubuntu. Download. Open up this. And you click on here to start the download. I've already started the download here. It's been downloading for a little bit. So while that's going, I'm going to go ahead and install VirtualBox. So we'll click on that and click Run. I just stick to all the defaults when installing VirtualBox. It's pretty straightforward. Doesn't take long at all. Plus the install file is not too big. Doesn't take very long to download. You want to check this box, otherwise it'll keep asking like a ton of different times. So and here it is, finished now. I'm running a Core i7 processor with an SSD and 8 gigs of RAM, so my machine's pretty quick. It might be a little slower on a smaller machine. Anyways, I will resume this podcast when the Ubuntu ISO file has completed its download. Okay, resuming this podcast. As you can see here, the Ubuntu has been downloaded. It's check the size. It should be about 695 megs. It's complete. So what I'll do, I've got VirtualBox open. So you see it's down here. The icon looks like that. I'll pin it to my taskbar, so if I close it, I could just open it by clicking that shortcut. So I'll click on New. I'll just type in Ubuntu, and you see VirtualBox is smart, where it can figure out by what you type in here what type of OS it's going to be. So you don't have to fill in these things. So click Next. Right here it asks you to allocate a certain amount of memory or RAM to the operating system when it's running. Now this won't take away from the RAM if the virtual is not running at the time. You can turn it on and off, but this is the memory that it'll be using while it's running the virtual machine. So I'm going to allocate 4 gigs. That's a lot, but I've got 8 gigs to use, so I think 4 gigs is safe in my case. But you can run Ubuntu on as little as 512 megabytes, as you see here. So you know, it won't run very smoothly, but you know, that's why I give it as much RAM as I have. So I'll click Next. It asks here if you want to create a virtual hard drive. I click Create, and I'll use the default VDI virtual disk image. I'm going to make the virtual hard drive dynamically allocated. You'll set a certain size, but then minimum size, but then it'll expand as needed if you need more space. So click Next, and I'm gonna bump it up to 15 gigabytes. But it depends on how much free hard drive space you have, how much you want to allocate, and it also depends on how much you're going to use this virtual. Remember, anything stored on your virtual drive will be encapsulated within this virtual drive. So I'm going to just give it a little more room, 14.9 gigabytes. I'll click Create. Remember, it said minimum was about 8 gigabytes for this operating system. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create. If you mess it up, you can always delete it. So now that the virtual has been created, I'll click Start. Now I haven't loaded the operating system yet. This is just like I'm powering on a machine, but in a virtual sense. So here it gives you information about auto capturing the keyboard. I recommend you read this carefully and then you tell it do not show this message again. If you don't think you'll remember any of this, don't check this box, but I'm going to check the box here so it doesn't keep bothering me. So here you can pick a drive to load the operating system from. If you want to use Windows XP or Windows 7, you have your Windows 7 or Windows XP disk and you put it right into the drive. In my case, I'm going to click on this and I'm going to browse for my Ubuntu ISO file, which is on my desktop. Click here, click Open, and there it selects it there, and click Start. So then basically it's going to boot from this virtual CD drive, or it's an ISO file. So I'll click Start there, and it's like the machine is turning on for the first time. And again, here we have another warning box talking about the colors, so take note of all this. Oh, here we got another one about mouse and pointer, about capturing. So I know what that says, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it do not show these. So here we go, it's booting VirtualBox, or booting Ubuntu for the first time. And Ubuntu's start splash screen, it is pretty high resolution, so I can do a couple of things. I can maximize here, but still I don't want these scroll bars. So what I'm going to do is change the view to switch to scale mode. That way it will switch to the same size, like it'll adjust the size of the resolution, and it'll shrink it or grow it depending on how big my window is. So here I have a couple of choices. You can actually run Ubuntu from the disk, from the installer disk, or in this case the ISO file. But I want to install it on the OS, so I'm going to click Install Ubuntu. These are Ubuntu warnings now. This is basically what you want, what Ubuntu wants you to know when it's installing. And I'm going to check these boxes. It takes a little bit longer, but I'm going to go ahead and do it and click Continue, because those updates and third-party things are add a little bit value to Ubuntu's operating system. So here it's warning you about erasing the disk, but in this case it's just the virtual disk that was created earlier in the steps. So I'm not worried about deleting any files. The disk is a virtual anyway. So if this was done on a computer with its own hard drive, it's not virtualized, but it was a true machine, you know, might want to worry about any data you might have on there. So I'm going to go ahead and click Continue and Erase. And here's the disk that it found. It's a 16 gig, roughly 16 gigs that I allocated. So I'm going to go ahead and click Install now. And here we've got our choice of time zones. Denver is the closest, and it's in the same time zone, so I'm going to click Continue. And while I'm doing this, you can see here Ubuntu is loading and copying a bunch of files. It's a very efficient setup process. So here I'm going to pick my language choices, just like if I was installing Windows. I'm going to pick my name. I'm the Ubuntu King. At least that's what I just came up with in my head. I'm going to have it log in automatically, and I don't want to have a password. I wonder if it'll let me. Nope, it wants me to type in a password, so it's a weak password, but for this purposes it'll work. Make sure it's a password you remember. Because Ubuntu, when you run certain items, it you know, when you want to do installs, it'll ask you for your password. It's like a Mac OS. Make sure you don't forget that, or you won't be able to install anything on Ubuntu. It's another part of the install here. It's continuing to install the files. Downloads have completed, and now it's installing the system. It says installation is complete. You have to restart. Remember, this is a virtual machine. It's not going to restart Windows or whatever your host operating system is. Okay, our Ubuntu virtual machine is up and running, and I could use it like this, but if I want to use it in full screen, I've got to make a couple of adjustments. First thing I need to do is change it out of scale mode. I hold down on a Windows keyboard, I hold down Control and C, and it switches it to a regular Windows mode. So I mean, you can see I have to scroll up and down, but it also gives me access to this menu here. And what I wanted to do is install guest editions, and that does a few things. It allows you to have better support with mouse pointers, and more importantly in my case, video support. So I'm gonna go ahead and, it's like it inserted a CD. I'm gonna go ahead and run that. Type in the password, and it's running the installer. So basically this is like updating the video driver for your virtual machine. Okay, Guest Editions has completed the installation. I'm just going to press return. So after I installed the Guest Editions, I went ahead and shut down the machine and started it back up. You can do that just by clicking over here and shut down. So that's what I did. I started it back up, and now it runs a lot better. I can run it in windowed mode or full screen. All I have to do is hold down the right control key on a Windows keyboard and hit the F key, and it brings up this, and I can switch it to full screen. So now it's like I'm running Ubuntu right on my machine. I can't even see Windows here, but right here in the bottom of the screen it has this mini menu, and this menu is part of VirtualBox, not part of Ubuntu. So that ends my presentation on how to create a virtual machine using VirtualBox and Ubuntu on a Windows host. Thank you for watching.